Are you serious? Are you serious? President Obama and Pope Francis. Are you guys serious? We're talking Fidel Castro. We're talking about one of the most brutal dictators in the history of the world. Do you want to know how many? Listen, I interviewed a man while I was in Israel who spent 40 years under the communist regime of Castro. He said when the regime first took over, that Castro killed all the all the nuns and all the priests and closed every church door in the entire country. Christians were brutalized, imprisoned, tortured. This went on for decades. This is a brutal regime with no regard for human life. These were thieves and thugs. They robbed the people of Cuba blind. They took over every industry. They ran this nation into the ground with a rod of iron. And I'm sorry, but you just don't get a free pass on that. They never once apologized for the brutality. You know how many Cubans died under this regime? Do you know how many Cubans drowned in the ocean trying to get away from this devil? And listen, Raul is just as bad as his brother. And Obama, I don't care that Obama went to Cuba and played patty cake with the Fidel Castro and Raul Castro. I don't care if the Pope went to Cuba and held mass. Coddling a bunch of dictators is no different than shaking hands and hanging out with Hitler or anyone else, or Idi Amin of Uganda. Or we go on, how many Kim Jong-il, and how many more dictators do you want to talk about? Stalin, how many, do you want to go further? I mean, come on, guys. Let me just say something now. And I don't care that Fidel Castro went to school with the Jesuits. I don't care. I don't care. And look, and Pope Francis is a Jesuit. I don't care. What I care about is nobody will stand up against brutality. Stand up against these wicked guys and call them out for what they are, Obama. You talk about wimpy. Now I'm sorry. Look, the President of the United States, with all due respect, that's wimpy. But you went down there and coddled them, so what am I surprised? And so did you, Pope Francis. So did you. So both of you. And guess what? I'm not the only one calling you guys out. So's Marco Rubio. He criticized Castro's condolences from the President Obama and Pope Francis. Senator Marco Rubio today criticized President Obama and Pope Francis for their response to the death of the former Cuban President Fidel Castro. He first went after Obama with a tweet on Saturday calling Obama's statement pathetic because the president focused on improved U.S.-Cuban relations. There's no improved relationship between the United States and Cuba. A little American flag outside of one little building called an embassy doesn't make the relationship better. Until the Cuban people are set free from the communist regime of the murderous Fidel Castro should be thrown in prison. That whole regime should have been taken down. And until that happens, you can't have a policy of improvement there. Now look, the Cuban people have suffered long enough. The last thing they need is the President of the United States and the Pope of Rome coddling the killers of Cuba. The Castro killers from Cuba. Don't miss tonight's Sunday Night Live. I'm going to go off on it. I'm going to go off I'm going to completely come unhinged. Could somebody stand up for the Cuban people? Does it take a preacher in the cornfields of Indiana to do that? That's pathetic. I agree with Senator Marco Rubio. I do. God bless the people of Cuba. Not the communist Castros.